The first time I saw her, she was barefoot, walking along the wet shore like she belonged to it, like the sea had sculpted her out of salt and longing and set her loose at the edge of the world. It was early spring, and I had just moved into my grandmother's old beach house after her passing. The place creaked with memory and smelled of sand and rosemary, but it felt like a retreat from everything I was trying to escape. I wasn't looking for mystery. But then came Coral. She appeared always during high tide, never before, never after. A figure in a flowing linen dress, long seafoam green hair clinging to her shoulders, her skin glistening like she'd just emerged from the waves themselves. I watched her from my upstairs balcony, hidden behind the lace curtains like some cliché of loneliness. At first, I thought she was just another reclusive artist, the kind of person who rented these beach houses for inspiration. But she never carried a phone, never brought a towel, never stayed long. And when the tide began to slip away, so did she. It became a pattern. She would arrive as the sea crept up the sand and vanish with its retreat. I never saw her enter the neighboring beach house, but the porch light flickered on during every high tide, without fail. Once, I tried to time it to catch her in between appearances, but it was like she evaporated with the ocean mist. I stopped trying, and started watching instead. Weeks turned into months, spring into summer, and every tide brought her back, silent, graceful, untouchable. I began to imagine who she was. Maybe a widow mourning something lost at sea. Maybe a ghost of the shore. Maybe just someone lonelier than me. I tried not to fixate. But the truth is, I became obsessed. I started mapping the tide charts, memorizing the rhythms of the ocean, as if they were her schedule. I rearranged my days around the windows when I knew she'd appear. I began to dream of her, though I'd never heard her voice. Then one night the storm came, a violent, screaming force that rattled the old windows and sent waves crashing over the dunes. The wind howled, tearing through the coastline like it was punishing the earth itself. I was about to light a candle when the power died. And then 3 knocks on my door. I froze. No one ever came here. Not during weather like this. I pulled the door open slowly, expecting maybe a lost tourist, maybe someone hurt. But it was her, Coral. Standing soaked in the downpour, her dress plastered to her skin, her eyes dark and wide and shining like something wild. "Your chimney sparked," she said, her voice lower than I'd imagined, almost like it came from beneath the waves. It looked dangerous. "You shouldn't light a fire." "You're my neighbor," I said, breathless. It wasn't a question. It was something between a recognition and a revelation. She nodded, water dripping from her eyelashes. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside wordlessly, heart pounding. She entered like the storm had delivered her to me, like the sea had decided I'd waited long enough. And as I closed the door behind her, locking us inside together for the first time, I knew something was about to change forever. The sound of the storm outside became a distant roar compared to the noise inside me. Coral stood just past the threshold, her body still dripping rainwater onto the wooden floor, her eyes flickering as if trying to adjust to something more than just the dimness of the room. I couldn't look away. Up close, she was even more otherworldly. Her hair clung to her cheeks in soft strands, and there was a shimmer to her skin, not like glitter, but like wet sand catching the moonlight. She didn't seem cold, despite the soaked dress clinging to her frame, and when I offered her a towel, she hesitated before taking it, wrapping it loosely around her shoulders with a kind of unfamiliarity, as if she wasn't used to warmth. "You don't light fires during storms?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though my voice cracked slightly. "Not with old chimneys," she replied, her tone soft but steady. "They draw in the wrong kind of air when the wind's like this." I didn't know how to respond to that. It was a strange thing to say, but there was no sarcasm in her voice, just certainty. She turned her attention to the window, watching the waves crash beyond the dunes, and I watched her watching. Her presence filled the room so completely it was hard to believe she'd ever not been in it. "Do you want something warm to drink?" I offered. "I have tea. Or cocoa. Or wine if you're the type." She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her gaze made my stomach clench. "Tea," she said finally. "Chamomile if you have it." I did. I made us both a cup, my hands shaking slightly as I poured the water. I could feel her behind me, could feel her eyes on the back of my neck, and yet when I turned around, she was at the far end of the room, by the bookshelf, her fingers skimming over the old spines like she was searching for something she used to know.
"This house has stories," she said.
I smiled faintly. "It's been in my family for 3 generations." She looked over her shoulder at me, her expression unreadable. "It remembers them." I handed her the tea. Our fingers brushed. Her skin was cool, too cool for someone who had just come in from the storm. But I didn't pull away.
Neither did she.
We sat by the window, and I watched the candlelight flicker against her profile. Her features were sharp, delicate, not fragile but precise, like something carved with care. Her collarbone peeked through the wet fabric of her dress, and I had to force myself to look at her eyes instead. "You only come during high tide," I said finally, unable to pretend I hadn't noticed. She didn't respond right away. "It's when I feel most grounded," she said after a moment. "The water anchors me." "Do you swim?" "Not anymore." "You walk the shoreline like you're waiting for something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Or someone." She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw pain flash across her face, quick as lightning. "Maybe I am." I wanted to ask more. I wanted to ask everything. Why she never stayed. Why she always left before the tide began to slip. Why her house, next door to mine, looked abandoned during the day. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I asked, "Why tonight?" She blinked slowly. The storm made the tide rise faster, stronger. It pulled me in earlier than I expected. "Pulled you in?" She gave me a sad smile. "It doesn't matter." I leaned forward slightly. "It does to me." She studied me for a long moment, then placed her teacup on the side table and stood. "I should go." "Go," I echoed, standing as well. "It's still pouring outside. You can stay here." I hesitated. "Just until morning. The couch is comfortable."
"And dry."
For the first time, she looked uncertain.
"Torn."
"I don't think I can." "Why not?" "Because the tide is already starting to turn." My breath caught. So, I'm not the same when it recedes." I stepped closer. "What does that mean?" She looked down. "You'll see." Her voice was almost a whisper, and something about the way she said it made my skin prickle. Then I noticed it. The candle near her had started to flicker more violently, its flame bending sharply away from her, as if repelled. I glanced at the window. The waves were drawing back, slowly but surely. The high tide had peaked. "Coral," I said, reaching for her. She stepped back. "Don't. Please." "Are you in danger?" "Not the kind you think." "Then what is it?" "I can't stay here," she said, backing toward the door. "Not when the water leaves." I didn't understand, but I could feel the urgency in her.
The fear.
She reached for the handle, and I saw it. Her fingertips shimmered, then shifted, like liquid glass trying to hold shape. I gasped. She froze. "You saw it," she said, and there was no point in denying it. "What are you?" I breathed. "Cursed," she said simply. "Or blessed, depending on who you ask." "Explain." "Not now. I'll be back. Tomorrow night, when the tide returns." And then she opened the door and ran into the storm, her figure swallowed by the wind and rain before I could follow. I stood there for a long time, the echo of her presence still lingering in the room, the air still colder where she had stood. I didn't sleep. I stayed by the window until dawn, watching the ocean slowly pull itself back, wondering what it had taken with it. The next day was unbearable. The house felt hollow without her in it, like the storm hadn't really left but had simply taken its chaos with her. I wandered through each room aimlessly, touching things she hadn't touched, staring at the towel still damp from her shoulders, the teacup she hadn't finished. I kept thinking I'd imagined the shimmer in her skin, the way her fingers distorted like fluid under pressure, but I hadn't.
"I knew what I saw,"
Something impossible. Something beautiful. Something terrifying. I spent the day glued to tide charts, weather apps, anything that could tell me exactly when the sea would swell again. I counted the hours like heartbeats. When night finally fell and the tide began to rise, I waited by the window, palms sweating, eyes fixed on the shoreline. The wind had died, the ocean breathing calm and rhythmic, and for a while, it seemed she wouldn't come. But then I saw her, walking slowly along the wet sand, bare feet kissing the edge of the water, her dress dancing softly around her knees. This time she was different, more hesitant, almost fragile, like the distance between us had grown heavier somehow. I rushed outside before she could disappear. "Coral," I called out. She stopped, turned slowly, her eyes catching the moonlight in a way that made them look almost silver. "You came back," I said, breathless. "I said I would." "You also said you were cursed." She looked away. "I shouldn't have." "Too late." I stepped closer, heart pounding. "I need to know." "Why?" she asked, but there was something raw in her voice, like she already knew the answer. "Because I care. Because I want to understand. Because you left and I couldn't stop thinking about you." Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't. Our fingers touched, and this time the shimmer didn't hide. It spread slowly across her skin, soft and bioluminescent like moonlight refracted through deep water. I didn't flinch. She watched me with something between awe and fear. "You're not afraid?" she asked. "Should I be?" "Yes," she whispered. "But I don't want you to be." We walked along the shore in silence, our hands still joined, until we reached the steps to her house, the one I had never seen lit during the day. She paused at the base. "You should know, once you cross this line, you're part of it." "Part of what?" "The truth." "Then show me." Her eyes searched mine for a long time before she led me inside. The house was dim, the walls lined with strange artifacts, shells, bones, vials of water sealed with wax, old maps with faded ink. It smelled of salt and something older, something I couldn't name. In the center of the living room was a glass basin filled with seawater, glowing faintly. "It's a tether," she said, seeing me look at it. "I can't be far from salt water for long. Not in this form." "This form?" She nodded, then slowly, carefully, let go of my hand and stepped back. I watched as her features softened further, as her legs shimmered and rippled, and for a second I thought I saw scales beneath the fabric of her dress. But just as quickly, it faded. "I'm not human," she said. "Not entirely." "What are you?" "A daughter of the tide. My family line was cursed generations ago. The women in my bloodline are bound to the ocean. We're allowed to walk the earth in human shape only when the tide is at its highest. When it recedes, we change back." "Change into what?" "Something with gills, with a spine that bends differently, with a voice the wind doesn't carry well." Her voice cracked then, and I felt the truth hit me like a wave. She wasn't just bound to the sea, she was made of it. "And if you stay too long away from the water?" "I unravel," she whispered. "I lose myself. My shape, my memory, my breath. But you're here now." "Because I couldn't stay away." Her eyes locked on mine. "Because you saw me. And I don't know how to unfeel that." My heart ached in a way I didn't expect. I stepped forward, reaching for her face, brushing back a strand of damp hair. "We'll figure this out." "There's no figuring it out," she said. "This is the way it's always been. We don't get to fall in love. We don't get to stay." "What if you could?" "Then I would never leave this shore again." The intensity of her words made my knees weak. I leaned in before I could think better of it, and our lips met, salted, soft, electric. Her mouth tasted like rain and sea and sorrow, and when she kissed me back, it was with a hunger that felt like it had waited centuries. But even as our bodies pressed together, even as her hands gripped my waist like she needed the contact to survive, I felt it, the pull of the tide beginning to turn. She broke the kiss suddenly, gasping. It's too soon, she said, stumbling backward. Her skin flickered, her legs unsteady. You have to go. No, Sage, please. Her voice was pained. If you see me shift again, if you see too much, it'll tie you to the curse. I don't care. You should. Her hands trembled. I'm not safe when the tide falls. I'm not myself. If I hurt you, you won't.
You don't know that.
I trust you. Her eyes filled with something that looked like grief. Then go.
Please.
Love what you've seen so far and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories. I want to remember you like this. I didn't want to leave, but her body was already changing, too fast this time, too violently. The shimmer spread, her bones moving beneath her skin like something alive. She collapsed beside the water basin, crawling toward it with desperation. I turned away, biting down a scream as I stepped out of the house and slammed the door behind me. I stood on the sand, listening to her cry out inside, her voice shifting from human to something else. And I swore, as the tide slipped back into the horizon, that I would never leave her alone during it again. I didn't sleep. Not after what I saw. Not after the way her body had convulsed, the light in her skin warping like it couldn't decide what she was supposed to be. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, the sound of the waves distant now, their lullaby tinged with menace. The tide had gone out, and with it Coral. Or what was left of her when she wasn't wrapped in her human shape. I didn't know what she became. I didn't know if she could even remember me like that. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep watching her break every time the ocean pulled away. I needed to find a way to stop it. The next morning, I drove into town. I hadn't been there in weeks, not since Coral first consumed my thoughts. It was a sleepy coastal village with weathered fishermen and shops that sold seashell trinkets to tourists. I went to the library first. It smelled like old paper and mildew and salt, and I didn't know what exactly I was looking for until I found it. In a forgotten corner, tucked behind books on maritime folklore and shipwrecks, there was a journal. Handwritten. Leather-bound. It wasn't catalogued. There was no barcode. Someone had left it there on purpose, or forgotten it in the place it belonged. I opened it and felt a chill run down my spine. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. She only walks when the tide is high. Skin of water. Heart of foam. A daughter of the sea. Cursed by blood. Bound by moon and bone. I turned page after page, reading stories, no, warnings, of women who walked the shores at night, who vanished by day, who lured lovers into the surf with promises of forever that dissolved with the dawn. But this wasn't just myth. I saw descriptions that matched Coral exactly. Green hair like seaweed, skin that shimmered like fish scale, a tether to salt water that grew violent if tested. One passage stood out. To break the binding, one must offer a trade. Something of equal weight. Love freely given. Blood freely spilled. Or breath freely surrendered. I stared at that line for a long time. Breath freely surrendered. What the hell did that mean? I copied the page word for word into my notebook and left the library shaking. That night, the tide rose again. I stood by the shore as the moonlight painted the waves silver, waiting for her, afraid I might have driven her away the night before. But then I saw her. Slower this time. Her steps unsure. Her posture not as fluid. She looked like someone who had barely survived something. Coral. I called, running to her. She smiled, tired. You stayed away. You told me to. You listened. Of course I did. We stood in silence for a moment, the ocean curling near our feet. Are you okay? I asked. No, she said honestly. It's getting harder. The shifts take more for me each time. My body's forgetting how to be solid. I reached for her hand. Then let me help. You can't. I've been looking. Researching. There's something. Sage, she interrupted gently. Don't. Why not? Because it always ends badly. It doesn't have to. It does, she said, her voice breaking. Someone always drowns. That's how these stories go. I don't believe in stories. I believe in you. Her eyes glistened. Then believe me when I say you're not ready for what I become. I want to see it. All of it. Even if it terrifies me. Why? Because I'm falling in love with you. The words dropped between us like an anchor. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I saw something shift in her. Fear, longing, disbelief. Don't say that, she whispered. Why not? Because it makes it real. It is real. She looked away, fighting tears. You don't know what I've done. Who I've hurt. Then tell me. She shook her head. I can't. You can. I want all of you. Not just the human hours. That broke her. She moved forward and kissed me again, deeper this time, urgent and reckless like we were running out of time. Her hands gripped my face, her body pressed to mine, and I could feel the tremble in her, like she was barely holding herself together. We sank to the sand, the tide whispering at our feet, and everything else disappeared. The world shrank to skin and salt and desperation. When we finally pulled apart, her breath came fast. The curse began with my great-grandmother, she said. She was a Selkie who fell in love with a fisherman. She gave up her skin for him, but he locked it away, kept her bound to the land. When she finally escaped, she cursed every daughter born after her to carry both worlds, to belong fully to neither. So you shift.
Yes.
But it's not just a transformation. It's a split. My body becomes ocean. My mind becomes something else. I lose myself. And when I return, I don't remember everything. Sometimes I wake up with blood on my hands. Sometimes the fish don't swim near me for days. But you've never hurt me. Yet. She looked at the sea. I feel it happening faster. The unraveling. I'm not supposed to stay this long. What if you didn't have to leave? She gave me a look. You read something. I did. About breaking the curse. There is no breaking it. There is. A trade. A sacrifice. No, she said sharply. Sage, no. You don't understand what that means. Then help me understand. Love freely given, she whispered. That's the first step. But the sea doesn't care about love. It demands payment. Then I'll pay it. You can't. The ocean doesn't bargain. It consumes. Let it. Her hands tightened on mine. If you give the sea your breath, you might not get it back. What if I'm willing? Then you're a fool. Then I'm your fool. And for the first time, she cried. Real, human tears. Not salt.
Not sea.
Tears that belonged to the woman I was falling for. She leaned her forehead against mine and whispered, Don't do this unless you're ready to drown. And I whispered back, Then teach me how to swim. The next few nights felt like borrowed time. The tide brought her back to me over and over again, but I could feel it in the way her hands trembled, in the way her voice caught mid-sentence, in the way she stared at the ocean like it was a ticking clock. We didn't speak of the ritual again, not directly. But every look, every touch, carried the weight of it. Coral began to teach me things, small, strange things at first. How to read the shape of waves. How to hear shifts in the current just by the wind. How to find the tide's edge with my bare feet, blindfolded. The sea listens, she told me one night as we stood ankle-deep in water, the moon mirrored perfectly on the surface. It remembers. If you want to ask it for something, you have to prove you belong. How do I do that? By becoming what it understands. Motion. Rhythm.
Pull.
She moved then, a slow, graceful motion I couldn't replicate. Part dance, part ritual, part surrender. She called it current skin, a word in her ancestral tongue that didn't translate directly. I tried to mimic her and failed, but she smiled anyway and guided my body with hers, each brush of her hand igniting something low and hot inside me. You're getting closer, she whispered, lips grazing my ear. But the ocean's jealous. It doesn't share well. I didn't fully understand what she meant until the dream started. I would wake up choking on seawater that wasn't there, my sheets soaked in salt. I'd hear things, Voices beneath the floorboards, whispers in a language I didn't know but felt etched into my bones. Something ancient had noticed me. Something deep. And it didn't like that I was learning. I told Coral about the dreams, and her expression darkened. "It's begun," she said. "What?" "The ocean knows your name now. And it's watching." "Then let it watch," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. She touched my face gently, her eyes full of sadness. "You have to understand, this isn't just a test. It's a warning. You're trespassing on sacred tides. If you push too far, it will push back." But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't. I had already crossed the threshold. I loved her. That night, I found the basin in her living room glowing more brightly than ever. She'd poured something into it, her own blood, maybe. The water pulsed like a heartbeat. "It's time," she said quietly, "to begin." She gave me a small shell, sharp as glass, and instructed me to cut the inside of my palm. The salt water hissed when my blood hit it, and I swear I heard something moan deep within the house, like the very foundation ached. "The ocean requires 3 offerings," she explained. "The first is your truth. You have to speak the thing you've never said aloud. The second is your body. You must let the water claim it, without resistance. The third," she hesitated, "the third is your breath. To be surrendered freely," I said, remembering the passage. She nodded slowly. "If you flinch, if you hesitate, the sea will know. It doesn't forgive hesitation." "Will you be there?" I asked. "Always." The first offering came easily. We sat by the basin, hands entwined, and I whispered, "I've never belonged anywhere. Not in cities. Not in families. Not even in my own skin. But with you, I don't feel lost." The water responded, glowing brighter. The second offering came harder. That night, she led me into the ocean, deeper than I'd ever gone, until the beach was only a memory behind us. "Let go," she said, and I did. I let myself fall backward into the sea, eyes closed, lungs open, surrendering to the salt and pull and current. It wrapped around me, cold and possessive. I felt hands, not hers, dragging me down. But I didn't fight. And eventually, the water released me, and I surfaced gasping new. Reborn. Coral caught me, pulling me against her chest. "You passed," she murmured. "The ocean likes you." "Does it always feel like drowning?" "The first time, yes." "And the last?" Her expression turned haunted. "No one knows. Most don't survive it." That night, she didn't go back to her house. We stayed wrapped in each other until dawn, skin to skin, heart to heart, every breath between us charged with something beyond lust. It was need. It was devotion.
It was a war cry.
But the next morning I found something on my porch. A dead bird, its wings soaked and twisted, shells broken around it. A warning. Coral saw it and went pale. "It's her," she said.
Who?
"The Tide Mother. The one who guards the curse. She doesn't want it broken. She's real. She is the ocean sage. Or at least the part of it that remembers being a god. She gave the curse to my ancestor as punishment for loving a human. And now she thinks we're doing the same. We are. Then she'll try to stop us." That night, the sky turned darker than I'd ever seen it. No moon, no stars, just a black canopy pressing down. Coral didn't appear. I waited at the edge of the shore until my legs were numb, until the tide receded without bringing her. I screamed her name. No answer. I ran to her house, but it was locked from the inside. No light, no sound. I pounded on the door until my fists bled. "Coral," I shouted. "Come back." And then I heard it. A whisper on the wind. Not her voice. Something older. Something wrong. "You took her from me," it said, cold and liquid. "Now I will take you." The wind howled, and suddenly the sand beneath me trembled. The sea surged unnaturally fast, pulling at my ankles even from 50 yards away. I ran, heart hammering, not from the water, but from the shape rising out of it.
Tall. Thin.
Eyes like whirlpools. Hair of kelp and darkness. The Tide Mother had arrived.
And she was not here to talk.
She rose from the sea like something born of nightmare and longing, tall and inhuman, her form shifting with every second. First a woman, then a wave, then a skeleton wrapped in seaweed and foam. Her voice carried on the wind but also beneath the surface of my skin, vibrating through bone and breath as she whispered, "You don't belong here." I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The water lapped at my ankles, though I stood far from the tide line, pulled toward her by something older than gravity. "Where is she?" I demanded, though my voice cracked.
Coral.
"What did you do to her?" The Tide Mother tilted her head slowly, her eyes swirling like whirlpools. "She is where she belongs."
Below.
"With me." "No," I said, stepping forward. "She belongs here. With me." The sea surged suddenly, slamming into my legs with the force of a body. I fell to my knees, salt burning into the cuts on my skin. "You presume to love what is mine," she hissed. "You think your small heart can carry a weight forged by tides and blood and centuries of betrayal." "Yes," I said, through gritted teeth. "Because I don't want to own her. I just want her free." That made the entity pause. A moment of stillness, like the ocean holding its breath. "You would give up your breath for her?" she asked. "You would drown for a creature who is only yours half the time?" "Yes." "You would die for her?" "If it means she gets to live without fear, then yes." The sea shuddered, waves crashing hard enough to shake the beach. The Tide Mother extended one long, shifting arm toward me. "Then prove it.
Come.
Dive into the place where she hides when she breaks. Go to the trench where the curse sleep. If you make it back, she is yours. If not, the ocean will digest your bones slowly." I stood, soaked and shaking, heart beating too loudly to hear the wind. "Take me," I said.
Now.
She didn't touch me.
She didn't have to.
The water rose and swallowed me in one gasp. No warning. No transition. One blink I was standing, the next, I was falling into darkness. I opened my eyes underwater, but nothing made sense. Down wasn't down. Up didn't exist. Everything glowed dim blue, and the pressure squeezed my ribs like a vice. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. But I wasn't dying. Not yet. She had made sure of that. I was suspended in the ocean's throat, and she wanted me to see what coral became. Shadows moved below. Large.
Slow.
Not fish. Not human. I drifted lower. Coral's name echoed inside me, louder than thought. "Find her. Find her. Find her." I passed bones embedded in rock. Ships torn apart. Statues worn by salt. And then I saw her, curled inside a cave of coral, real coral. Arms wrapped around her knees, her body fully transformed. Her hair floated like seagrass. Her back rippled with fins. Her gills opened and closed rhythmically, and her skin was covered in the sheen of scale and sorrow. She wasn't human, but she was still beautiful, still mine. I swam toward her, lungs burning, vision flickering at the edges. Her eyes opened as I approached, and for a moment, she didn't recognize me. Then, slowly, she reached for me. I took her hands, anchoring myself to her. I mouthed her name, unable to speak. She shook her head slowly, mouth opening in a warning. "Go.
Leave. Now."
But I held tighter. I pressed my forehead to hers. I remembered the third offering. My breath. Freely surrendered. I exhaled. A full, final release of air into the water, bubbles dancing upward like a prayer. I felt the pain immediately, the panic, but I didn't fight it. I closed my eyes and gave it freely. Everything. The moment I let go, everything changed. The water around us pulsed. Warmth spread through my limbs, not burning, but awakening. My vision darkened, but I felt Coral's hands move to my face, and then something bright, something blinding, like lightning under the ocean, flashed behind my eyes. My body convulsed. Then silence. I opened my eyes to see her human again, holding me. We were still underwater, but I could breathe. I could breathe. I gasped, and the water filled my lungs like air. She looked at me in awe and fear. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I gave it," I said. "All of it. So you wouldn't be alone down here. But you're not like me. Aren't I now?" She pulled me close, holding me so tightly I thought I might break. "You foolish, beautiful girl. You said only a fool would love you. And you believed me." I nodded. She laughed, but it cracked in the middle, and her fingers gripped me like I might dissolve. "The ocean knows you now. You're part of this world." "Good," I said. "Then I can go wherever you go. Even here?" "Especially here." But then everything shifted again. The water trembled. A scream, more like a rupture, ripped through the trench. The Tide Mother was not pleased. She appeared at the mouth of the cave, her form now massive, too large to fit, her eyes furious whirlpools. "You broke the boundary," she thundered. "You are not mine." "No," I said. "I'm hers." I stood in front of Coral, shielding her. "You offered a test. I passed." "You surrendered your breath," the Tide Mother spat. "You made a trade. And now you owe me." She hissed, the water pulsing violently. "What do you want?" "Her freedom." "She is of my blood." "Not anymore." "You will never be able to leave these waters," she warned. "You will crave the tide. You will need the current. You will become hollow on land." "So be it." The Tide Mother's eyes narrowed. "You would turn your back on the shore for love." "I would drown 1,000 times if it meant she'd never cry again." And with that, the sea pulsed once more, and she vanished. Just gone, as if she had never been. Coral collapsed into me, shaking. "You don't know what you've done," she whispered. "I think I do. You've changed. I can feel it. You're not just human anymore." "Then maybe now we're equals." "We're not." She cupped my face. "You gave up too much. I gave it to you." She kissed me then, under the water, no breath between us, no fear, just the sound of the deep vibrating around us like a song only we could hear. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know what I had become, but I knew I had her, and that was enough. The days that followed blurred into tides and touch and silence, too loud to ignore. I no longer measured time by hours or sunrises, but by the rhythm of waves and the pull in my chest that told me when the sea wanted me. I was changing. Not all at once, not like Coral did when the water retreated, but slowly. An ache in my lungs when I stayed too long on land, a craving for salt that no meal could satisfy, a sense that my feet didn't quite belong on sand anymore. I hadn't been back to the surface since the ritual. Coral and I had carved out a quiet place in the trench where the curse slept. The water no longer fought me. I could breathe it as easily as air, and when Coral held me at night, if night even existed down there, I felt whole. But something inside me itched. At first, I thought it was the adjustment, the body learning a new rhythm. But then I began to hear things. Not voices, not quite. Echoes. Vibrations through the currents. Memories that weren't mine. Whispers from whales long dead and Coral that still remembered the first wound of a harpoon. I would wake, or whatever the underwater version of waking was, with Coral watching me, worry carved into every line of her face. "You're hearing them," she said softly one night. "The old ones. The voices of the deep. How do I make them stop?" "You don't. Once you belong to the sea, it speaks through you. And sometimes it listens back." "Have you heard them before?" She hesitated. "Not like you. Not this loud." "Why me?" "Because you weren't born of it. You bled into it. You gave something it hadn't tasted in a long time. Choice." I didn't know whether that made me stronger or more vulnerable. The next time we surfaced, it was high tide. We lay on the shore, still wet from the deep, tangled in seaweed and blankets, the moon casting silver patterns across Coral's bare shoulders. Her skin shimmered with residual scales, and mine had started to do the same. Only faintly, but there. "Your eyes," she whispered, touching my cheek. "They're darker now, like the ocean pulled its color into them." "Do you still see me?" I asked. "Or just the sea?"
Both, she said.
And neither. You're becoming something new. We kissed like drowning was still an option, like every time might be the last time. But even wrapped in her, I felt it. That pull, that whisper. The sea was calling me back. Not gently, not sweetly. It was demanding. The next day, I wandered farther along the beach than I ever had. My feet led me to a jagged cliffside where the rocks jutted out like broken teeth, and there, hidden behind a curtain of vines, I found a cave. The air inside was thick with salt and memory. The walls were etched with symbols I recognized but couldn't name. I touched one and felt my vision snap. I saw Coral, no, her ancestor, locked in a fisherman's cottage, sobbing as she clawed at the chest where her skin had been hidden. I saw the sea rage, swallowing boats whole, dragging children from shores. I saw women walk into the waves and never return, not because they wanted to die, but because they had heard the same whisper I now carried in my blood. I stumbled out of the cave, gasping, trembling. When I returned to Coral, she was waiting with fear in her eyes.
You found it, she said.
You weren't supposed to find it. What is that place?
The first wound, she said.
The place where the curse began. Why did it show me your past? Because it's becoming your past too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I drifted alone through the water, letting the current guide me, hoping to quiet the whispers. But instead, they grew louder. They began to chant. Not in English. Not in any human language. But I understood it anyway. You are the doorway. You are the debt repaid. You are the next tide. I surfaced, gasping, heart racing. Coral found me hours later, curled against a rock, eyes wide with panic. Something's wrong, I told her. It's like they're inside me now. They are. I can't control it. You're not supposed to control it, she said gently. You're supposed to become it. I didn't ask for this. You offered yourself to the sea. You gave your breath. That doesn't just change your lungs, Sage. It changes your soul. I backed away, shaking. Then what am I now? Coral stepped forward, tears in her eyes. You're mine, she said.
Still.
Even if you belong to the tide, you belong to me. I clung to that, for a while. But the more I tried to stay still, the more I felt the ocean rising inside me. Not metaphorically. Literally. My veins pulsed with tides. My blood cooled. My heartbeat synced with the moon. And then, one night, I heard her again. The Tide Mother. Not in front of me this time, but within me. You thought you escaped me, little breathless girl, she whispered. But all you did was open the next gate. You let me in. I dropped to my knees in the sand, screaming, water pouring from my mouth. Coral ran to me, caught me, held me. You're not alone, she said over and over. You're not alone. But I was. I could feel it. A seed had been planted in me that night in the trench. Not just change. Not just power. A tether. And it was growing. I wasn't just becoming part of the sea. The sea was becoming part of me. And I didn't know if I could hold it back much longer. The change came slowly at first, a soft ache in my chest that I mistook for longing, a restlessness I blamed on too many nights without sleep. But then it sharpened. The air began to burn my lungs. I couldn't stand to be far from the water. My skin itched constantly, and no fabric felt right against it. My fingers tingled with electric static when I touched anything dry. I woke one morning with seawater dripping from my eyes like tears and my heartbeat thudding like a wave crashing against stone. The tide was rising inside me, not metaphorically, not anymore. I was losing time, blacking out in moments of stillness and returning to myself somewhere else, somewhere wet, salty, humming with deep song. Coral tried to anchor me. She stayed close, watching me with a devotion that broke my heart. She never flinched, even when my voice deepened with that echoing undertone, even when my eyes changed color mid-sentence, even when my skin flashed with translucent scale in moonlight. She loved me still, but I could see the fear in her too. She knew what I didn't want to admit. I wasn't just changing. I was becoming something the sea had designed, not something it had borrowed. You're resisting it, She told me one night as we floated in shallow water. That's why it hurts. I don't want to lose myself, I whispered. You won't. But you're not who you were anymore. You can't go back. You gave your breath, Sage. You're not just mine now. You're theirs too. The voices, the ocean, the old ones, the memory of every wave. It's inside you. So, what happens when it wants to take over? Coral didn't answer. She just kissed me, like she could seal the answer behind my teeth before I asked again. That night, I dreamt I was standing at the edge of a cliff, watching myself below, rising out of the sea with arms made of current and hair like kelp. I watched myself walk toward the shore and open my mouth. When I did, a flood poured out, screams, water, storm. And then I woke choking on seawater. Coral held me, shaking. It's getting worse, she said. You're drawing storms in your sleep. How do we stop it? We don't. You have to give it shape. Let it move through you. Otherwise, it'll destroy everything you love just to escape. I didn't want to believe her. But that night, lightning struck the edge of the beach house. The sea rose higher than it ever had. And the tide didn't recede. It stayed. For days. The ocean surrounded the house like it had claimed it, like it had claimed me. I barely slept. I walked the shoreline over and over, talking to the waves like they might answer, begging them to be gentle. But they wanted something. They were waiting for me to understand. And then, on the fourth night, the voices returned in full. Not whispers. Commands. The old tide breaks. The new one rises. The breathless girl becomes the sea. The heart must be left behind. I dropped to my knees in the water, screaming, not in fear, but in rage. No, I shouted. You don't get to take her. You don't get to erase me. But the tide surged, wrapping around my waist, pulling. Coral ran into the surf, grabbing me, holding tight. Sage, she yelled. Stay with me. My body convulsed. My veins lit up like veins of bioluminescence. My voice split into three. I can't hold it, I cried. It wants out. Then let it out. But stay with me while it does. I opened my mouth and screamed, and the water around us exploded upward in a column of salt and light. For a moment, I wasn't Sage anymore. I was tied in current and history. I saw every storm that ever touched this coast. Every woman who had walked into the sea with a secret. Every curse. Every cry. Every love lost. And I saw her. The Tide Mother. Not as a monster, but as a woman once betrayed. A woman who had given everything and been turned into a myth for it. I understood then. She wasn't just guarding the curse. She was guarding her grief.
And she had given a piece of it to me.
When I came back to myself, I was floating. Coral was holding me, tears slipping down her cheeks, salt lost in salt. You're still here, she said softly. You're still you. Barely, I whispered. They want more. What do they want? My heart. She froze. What? To stay balanced. To contain all this power. They say I have to give up the thing that keeps me human. My love for you. Coral's breath caught. You can't. If I don't, this will consume everything. It'll flood this place. The whole coast. Maybe more. Then we'll find another way. There is no other way. Sage, I'd rather drown with you than live without you. Don't say that. I mean it. Then let's go together, she whispered. Into the deep. If you're going to lose yourself, let me be the part you can't forget. I kissed her like it was the last time, because maybe it was. I held her face. Memorized every line. If I change, I said, if I forget, find me. Call me back. I will. Promise. I swear on every wave. I turned toward the sea. The voices surged. The current opened. And I walked into it, letting it take me. Coral followed, hand in mine, into the trench, into the dark. Into whatever waited next. The deep was darker than any night I had ever known, not just absence of light, but a presence of something older than light itself. It pressed against my skin like memory, like grief, like bone-deep silence that wanted to rewrite everything I was. Coral's hand was in mine, and that was the only thing that felt real. Her warmth, her grip, her pulse steady beneath her fingers. Everything else, our bodies, the water, the pressure, was shifting, bending, being swallowed. The trench opened like a mouth beneath us, and we let it take us. There was no more up or down, no more time. Just current and current and current. I didn't know how long we drifted. Minutes. Centuries. It didn't matter. All that mattered was her hand and the quiet voice inside me whispering, "This is the place where gods sleep." When we finally stopped, the water grew still. We floated before a structure made of coral and stone, half ruin, half temple. It pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, alive with the memory of tides. The gates opened without sound. Inside, the current slowed to a hush, like the ocean itself was holding its breath. Then she appeared. Not a monster. Not anymore. The Tide Mother emerged from the heart of the temple like she'd always been waiting, her form no longer terrifying but regal, vast, clothed in robes of shifting current and scale. Her face was etched with sorrow, too old for words. Her eyes were whirlpools filled with storms that had never touched land. "You've come," she said. Her voice no longer thundered. It resonated. I stood taller than I thought I could. "I have. To bargain? To finish what I started." Coral stepped beside me. "She's not alone." "She never was," the Tide Mother said. That was the point. She moved closer, her body leaving no ripple in the water. "You carry too much, child. You were meant to be a vessel, not a storm." "Then take it back," I said. "Take all of it." "I cannot. You gave your breath freely."
It is yours now.
"And everything it bought. Then what do you want from me?" "Nothing." She turned her gaze to Coral. "It's her I need." "No," I said, stepping forward. "You already had her. Her whole life. No more. She carries my blood. She is my lineage. I can't unmake that." "Then take me instead. Let her go." "You would take her place?" "In every life, in every world." The Tide Mother studied me with something unreadable. "You love her." "Yes." "And you would give her up to save her?" My throat tightened. "If I have to." Coral gasped.
No.
"Don't." "I can't lose you," I told her, my voice cracking. "And I can't let you be erased for something you didn't choose." "Neither can I," she said, grabbing my face. "We do this together. Or not at all." "Then choose," the Tide Mother said.
Now.
"Both of you." The sea has no patience for hesitation. We looked at each other, suspended in a moment that felt like a lifetime. I could feel her in every part of me, not just her hand, but her soul, tangled in mine. "You have to let go of something," the Tide Mother warned. "The power or the heart. You cannot keep both." "What happens if I try?" "You will become the storm. The kind that never ends." My chest ached. My pulse fluttered. I looked at Coral one last time. "Then I choose the heart." "No," Coral cried. "Sage, don't." But it was already happening. I felt the energy within me begin to unravel, the power cracking through my veins like lightning in water. I opened my arms and let it go. All of it. Every wave. Every whisper. Every ounce of the ocean that lived inside me. I gave it back. Freely. And it hurt. God, it hurt. Like being pulled inside out. Like drowning in reverse. Coral clung to me, trying to hold me together as the sea ripped through me on its way out. And then it was gone. All of it. The voices. The strength. The ache. Just gone. I collapsed into her arms, limp, breathless in the truest sense. "Sage," she whispered, shaking.
No. No.
"Don't you dare." But I wasn't dying. I was empty. Just human. The silence was unbearable. The Tide Mother stood above us, unreadable. "You surprised me," she said at last. "You surrendered what I could never give back." "Because love isn't meant to be bound," I rasped. "It's meant to be chosen." "Then I release her," she said. "Both of you. No more curse. No more tides. No more chains." Coral let out a sob, burying her face against my shoulder. I wrapped my arms around her weakly. "It's over," she whispered. "You did it." We did. The temple began to dissolve, fading like sea foam in sunlight. The current lifted us, carried us back toward the surface, toward breath and sky and sand. We rose hand in hand, no longer tethered, no longer cursed. Just two women who had dared to love in the eye of a storm. As we broke the surface, the stars returned. The tide was still. The night was calm. And we were free. The shore looked different when we returned. Not because it had changed, but because we had. The sky seemed wider. The sand felt warmer beneath our feet. The wind smelled of peace instead of warning. We walked out of the water hand in hand, dripping salt and silence, and the beach house stood waiting like a memory that finally understood it didn't need to haunt us anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, the tide didn't tug at Coral's bones. Her shoulders weren't braced against an unseen current. Her steps didn't falter as the moon rose higher. She was whole.
Free. Human.
And I was just me again. No voices in my blood. No shimmer in my skin. No power humming under my ribs. Just sage. Just breath. Just love. We didn't speak at first. Words would have broken the moment. We crossed the sand like survivors crawling out of a story that had tried to rewrite us. I turned to her when we reached the porch. She looked at me with those eyes, storm-touched, sea-soft, and finally unafraid. "You chose me," she whispered. "You always chose me." "I'd do it again," I said. "Even if it broke me, it did. And I'd still do it." She leaned in slowly, like she wanted to savor every second before our mouths met. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, like neither of us believed it was real yet. Then it deepened, like an anchor dropped into still water, and all the things we hadn't said poured through our lips. The fear, the ache, the relief, the quiet promise of a future we never thought we'd earn. When we finally pulled apart, she laughed, light and real, the kind of laugh that sounds like a life beginning. "You taste like salt," she said. "You always did." We went inside. The house was exactly how we left it, untouched by the storm that should have wrecked it, waiting for us like it had been holding its breath too. We curled into the bed upstairs, tangled in blankets that still smelled faintly of rosemary and sea. She traced my collarbone with her fingertips, slow and reverent, like she was memorizing the new version of me. "It's strange," she murmured. "I thought I'd miss it. The ocean, the tether, the transformation, that other self. Do you?" "No," she said. "Not when I'm like this. Not when I'm with you." I kissed her again, and this time, it wasn't desperate or sacred. It was just ours. The kind of kiss that says, "We made it. We're here. We get to stay." Days passed, and they didn't disappear with the tide. We woke up together, and didn't have to count minutes. We cooked in the kitchen with the windows open, wind weaving through our hair. We walked the beach at noon, at dusk, at midnight, not because we were waiting for the sea, but because it no longer owned us. I painted again. Coral wrote music on napkins and sang to me when she thought I wasn't listening. We built a life in the quiet, in the ordinary, and it was more magical than any curse. One evening, weeks later, we stood on the porch and watched the tide come in. It was full, wild, beautiful, but it didn't pull her away. It didn't whisper in my chest. We just stood there, two women in love, watching the ocean and knowing it no longer defined us. "Do you think she's still watching?" Coral asked, her voice soft. "The tide mother?" Maybe," I said. "But I think she's resting now. Because of you. Because of us." She nodded, then tilted her head. "Do you miss the power?" "No," I said. "It was never mine." I pulled her closer, arms around her waist, lips brushing her temple. "This is." That night, we lit candles. Not for ritual, just for glow. We danced barefoot on the wood floor to the sound of our laughter. We loved without fear. We fell asleep skin to skin, and when the tide receded, nothing changed. The love stayed.
The sky didn't cry. The sea didn't take.
I dreamed of a child, years from now, running barefoot along the shore, Coral calling her name from the porch. I dreamed of our hair silvering together, of tide charts forgotten in drawers, of kisses that didn't count down minutes. I dreamed of a love that held. And when I woke, she was still there, curled beside me, breathing softly real. I traced her back with my fingertips and whispered, "You're home." And she whispered back, "So are you." Thank you so much for being here and for believing in this channel. If you feel in your heart, you can donate with super thanks so I can focus more and more on this project. Your support helps me keep creating these love stories and bringing them to life for you. See you in the next video.